So the NFL Draft Combine had me losing my damn mind. I'll tell you about it here next on Michigan Podcast.
But there's going to be one team that's going to play solely as a team. No man is more important than the team. No coach is more important than the team. The team, the team, the team.
Looks deep for Anthony Carter. Waits for it. Hit. Caught.
This is no time for that. In the pocket and a sack. Tim Jamison.
Brady gets terrific. Throws it. Get it. Touchdown. Knight again. Schultz just before Brazil got him. And a leaping interception by Woodson.
Harbaugh back to throw over the middle. Caught by Collier at the 5 on his feet. Touchdown, Michigan. On its way. It's good.
He's 5'7", 179 pounds, a junior at Michigan. But Jamie Morris packs a wallop, and he delivers for Bo Schembechler.
And here's your first play. Pressure coming. Sack. It is Glenn Steele, number 81, who fought his way through the traffic.
Option. And Robinson calls his own number, and he's going to score. Oh, an easy touchdown for Robinson and Michigan.
Win it. We're going to win the championship again because we're going to play as a team. And when we play as a team and the old season is over, you and I know it's going to be Michigan again. Michigan.
Greetings and welcome to this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. I am Steve Deace. I'll be joined by my partners over at Wolverine Digest, Michael Spath and Brandon Brown, coming up here in just a matter of moments. But first, the NFL held its annual scouting combine prior to the draft this past weekend. And watching it from a Michigan fan perspective caused me to lose my damn mind. Now, some context. I don't cover the program close. I live in Iowa. I'm a fanalist. I don't go to games, pressers. I've got other careers, jobs. This is what I do for fun. So I don't have like relationships with coaches and stuff and sources. You know, Michael, Brandon do all that, and other people at other sites that I subscribe to too do a great job of that. So I bring that up, though, because I don't have those relationships and that kind of access. So I don't get the other side of the story, the insider side of the story. I don't have access to that as a first person. So I only see this as a fanalist. All right. I'm a proud Walmart Wolverine, you know, and I've been one since 1983. It's a long time. So I've earned it. I've spent the gross domestic product of a small Latin American country. I'm a Michigan fandom over the years. I'm a made man. I bought my way in. All right. But I only see it the way that a lot of you that watch shows like this and comment on them or message boards and things like that, the way you see it as a fanalist, okay? And sometimes, you know, you can be so close to a situation that you can't see what's right in front of you. Other times, though, you can have such a broad perspective, you don't see the forest for the trees. It just varies, you know? But that's why I tend to see things from the perspective that I do. I'm sure if I were so-and-so with access to Schembechler Hall, you know, and coaches that I got to talk to off the record all the time, I could have a reasonable explanation for why so many Michigan players tested off the frickin' charts in Indianapolis over the weekend and then went out and lost 4 games this season. There must be some, you know, as the great prophet Phil Collins said, there must be some misunderstanding, okay? But I've been waiting in the rain, the scarlet and gray acid rain for hours, and I don't have an answer yet. Because what I see is a team that had no business losing 4 games. Take away Alabama said Josh Uche was the best defensive player they faced all season. Michigan safeties, that Josh Metellus, the guy that couldn't cover anybody, man. He actually ran faster than both of Ohio State's wide receivers at the combine. 4.56 for a safety is legit. That's a very good time. Khaleke Hudson ran a 4.57. He couldn't cover Pat Freiermuth, the tight end for Penn State this past season. Donovan Peoples-Jones had one of the most impressive wide receiver workouts in the history of the NFL scouting combine. Glad we barely threw the ball to him. How about Shea Patterson? Other than Justin Love, maybe Justin Herbert, the most overall athletic quarterback at the combine this year. Man, how about all those times that he had like wide open space to go and run the ball and just handed it off on the inside zone into a 59-man front for nothing. Good times. Yes, indeed. Yes, it was great. Second most players invited to the combine, Michigan, tied with Ohio State. And the vast majority of players we invited to the combine were that we got invited to the combine were very impressive while there. Yet, we lost 4 games and really didn't accomplish anything significant this season other than spanking a Sparty team that at that point was wearing, pants, chaps with their ass hanging out, basically, is what Sparty was as a program by the time we played them. I don't get it, man. I don't get it. I'm going to ask Spath and Brandon about it here in a few minutes. But if you watched Michigan at the scouting combine, you watched its players. That's not a team that should have lost 4 games. And I'll even, I don't care about the Ohio State game anymore. It's gone as far as I'm concerned. You guys know that. We play an 11-game season. Those of you watching this that are apologists, well, Steve, we can't. Everybody else that we can't beat, they cheat, and we can't do that. And we're the only place where the kids actually go to class, Steve. Okay, fine. All right. I'll buy the official state-sponsored explanation and just remove Ohio State from the equation then. Explain the other. Okay, I'll remove Alabama. Fine, same thing. How about the other 2 losses? I mean, what was the explanation? What was the explanation for those? In 2016, we had the most players drafted into the NFL. We lost 3 games. This year, we had the second most players show up at the combine. Several of them showed out. We lost 4. And this is the thing that I love about NFL draft season. All of our fan tropes, our whiny fan tropes, all of the spin that we get, all of the little lies that we whisper to ourselves during the year, the rationalizations, they all get blown up. They all get blown up in NFL draft season. They all do. Because NFL don't care. It stands for not for long. All right. There's no buddy system. There's no caste system. There's no system. The system is, are you not in prison currently? And can you win games? Cool. Then let's talk. That's the only system. That's the system. And so it's just cold-blooded, man, straight up mercenary football. That's all they care about. That's it. And so everything gets, every table is turned over. Every fig leaf is removed. Every veil is torn. And that's what I love about this season. And what you learned if you watched the last few days is that Michigan team should not have been 9-4. So then we are left to ask ourselves, then why was it? Why have we lost at least 3 games every year that Jim Harbaugh has been here? And you can save me the comments. Well, Steve, the program is where it was when Bo Schembechler was. No, it's not. Bo's win percentage is like 50 points higher than Jim Harbaugh's at Michigan, by the way. So that's not true. That's a scam. Okay? It's not true. So why? Why? If you've got an athlete like Donovan Peoples-Jones, why aren't you throwing the poop out of him? Throwing the poop out of the ball to him? Why? Why? Well, we got to have offensive balance. Well, we don't have any tailbacks as good as J.K. Dobbins and Jonathan Taylor. So I'll give you offensive balance. Number 9 is bigger, taller, and faster than everybody else in the field. So we're going to throw him the ball. That's our balance. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. And It's driving me bonkers. We'll see what Michael Spath and Brandon Brown have to say about this conundrum when we come back. Steve Deace here. I just want to say a quick thank you to our new partner, Surfshark, who knows that our entire lives are spent online, and you need to make sure that you're protected. Surfshark is a VPN service that makes online protection easy. Don't you hate it when you get an ad that pops up online and makes you think, hey, who's listening in to what I'm doing here? Well, Surfshark helps to get rid of those targeted ads. And Surfshark makes sure nobody is seeing your personal info without your permission and protects you from hackers who are after either your emails or your passwords. It's super easy to use too. Get Surfshark VPN at surfshark.deals/Michigan Podcast. That's surfshark.deals/Michigan Podcast. Enter promo code Michigan Podcast for 83% off and 1 extra month free. Promo code Michigan Podcast for 83% off and 1 extra month free. Try it out now and know that you are safe online. Surfshark VPN. Back here on Michigan Podcast, let's get to the Wolverine Digest Roundtable with my partners over at Wolverine Digest from WTKA-Ann Arbor, Michael Spath and Brandon Brown. Gentlemen, good to have you with us. How are you?
Very good, Steve. Very good.
Have you guys gotten the taste of spring up there yet in Michigan? Because here in the lower Midwest in Iowa, we've had temps in the 50s, going to be up near 70 this weekend, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, we definitely have. We had it, I think it was like mid-50s yesterday. It's about 50 degrees today. Man, it makes you feel like spring is right around the corner, and then I guarantee you some point this month we'll get snow.
Yeah, but that also means Cadbury mini eggs are out, guys. I assume you know what those are?
That's true.
Oh, yeah.
And I don't mean, and I'm not talking the big fat ones with the yolk in the middle. I'm talking the little sugary shells in the purple bag. Those things make crack look like Sanka. I freaking love those things. They're great.
See, I love the ones with the cream in the middle, man. I can't get enough of those things.
Those are good too, but the ones in the purple bag are divine. Brandon, do you know what I'm talking about? It's white trash delicacy, brother.
I thought those were like Whoppers that you're talking about. The different take on the Whopper.
No, those are no. Those will blow the Whoppers away. Whoppers are those malted milk balls that destroy your teeth, right? That's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
No.
My dad's a big fan of them. I am not. I just go ahead and give me about 4 dozen Reese's peanut butter eggs, and I'll be good.
Well, those are great too. But I'm telling you, Cadbury mini eggs. Go get a purple bag, and after a few of them, we're going to find Brandon Brown strung out on the mean streets of Ann Arbor with a needle out of his arm, injecting them into his veins, strung out on Cadbury mini eggs. That's how great those are. Anyway, let's get to one of the other rites of passage this time of year, and that is March Madness is just around the corner. We're only about, 11 days until Selection Sunday. Michigan looks to be safely, securely in to the NCAA basketball tournament based on its overall resume. But it does seem that every time you're about ready to start forecasting what you think this team can then go on and do, or you're about ready to bail, it shifts, like the weather in the Midwest this time of year between spring and winter, winter and spring. That's kind of what's going on with this Michigan basketball team right now. Michael, why is that?
I don't know. I don't think any of us can really figure them out. Certainly, I think the biggest thing is that they don't shoot the three ball very well. Play this year, and then they don't defend the three-point shot very well either. I believe they rank 12th out of 14 teams in opponent field goal percentage from three. So they just don't defend what is such a important part of today's basketball game. And so when they don't do that, I mean, they got to have to, grid and grind basketball victories out with playing really good defense overall. And then when they've got, we've talked about the last couple of days, if you look at their last two games, Xavier Simpson has played exceptional in both the last two games, both their losses. Franz Wagner played really good in the second half of both those games. Other than that, who's played well? And the answer is nobody. And so if you have 6 out of your 8 rotation guys not playing good basketball all at the same time, you're going to have some losses. They're just maddeningly inconsistent this year. And so when we're trying to put an accurate forecast on what they could do, I mean, when you say that they could get to the Sweet 16 or beyond, you're being truthful. When you say that they could get bounced in the very first round of the NCAA tournament, you're also being truthful.
Brandon, I think there is legitimately at least 30 teams that could get to a Final Four this year. Now, I think the number of teams that can, once they're there, could win those other 2 games against other top competition is a much smaller list. But if you look at, I was texting this to you guys the other night, if you look at Ken Palm's efficiency numbers for the top-ranked teams, if you compare Kansas's overall power rating at Ken Palm compared to Virginia last year, I mean, last year's Virginia is like 4 points better. Villanova 2 years ago was like 3 points better, meaning on a neutral court, that's how much they'd be favored over them according to Ken Palm. And in fact, Kansas has the lowest overall efficiency rating, power rating at Ken Palm for a number 1 overall team in the last 6 years in college basketball. So there's a lot of folks hosting shows around the country about a lot of top-notch basketball programs right now having the same conversation we're having about Michigan, which is, who is this team? Because there's a lot of up and down this season in the sport.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. We've obviously documented it much more closely in the Big Ten. Teams going on the road for half the conference slate. They're probably not half, but for a good chunk of the conference slate, a Big Ten team had not won on the road. I think it slid back to the mean a little bit, but it's still been really hard to do. And then you have Michigan go on a 4-game winning streak on the road, and now they've lost 4 or 5 games at home. It's just been a weird up and down, and obviously Michigan dealt with the Isaiah Livers injury, and then Eli Brooks missed a game, and that affected them a lot more than a lot of people probably thought that it would. To Michael's point, you're only getting good play out of a couple guys every night. I mean, Isaiah Livers comes back from his ankle injury, scores 19 on the road against Purdue. Michigan wins for the first time in Mackey Arena in 6 years, and then basically disappears for the next 2 games. Missing free throws down the stretch. Brandon Johns, who looked like he was about ready to turn a corner and be like 6th man of the year type of guy off the bench, has been virtually non-existent over the last 2 games. Yeah, it's just been really weird. I mean, again, I'm much more plugged into Michigan and Big Ten basketball than I am the entire country, but you've seen it. You've seen these quote-unquote really good teams lose a weird game at home or go on the road and get beat by 20. It's just been really bizarre, and we've talked about this on the radio already this week, and every year when you go on to the different websites and you fill out your bracket, there's almost always one team that probably gets more than 50% of the total votes to be the favorite to win the whole thing. I would assume Kansas is going to be that team this year, but I don't think it's going to approach the majority numbers that it usually does. I mean, I think if you picked Kansas to win it all, that might be a safe play, but I don't think you're going to see, scads and scads of people's brackets all having Kansas win the whole thing. It's just been wide open all year, and that's why what Michael said, like, Michigan could make it to the Sweet 16 or they could be one and done. We'll just have to wait and see how it plays out and which team shows up.
Michael, back to you, and let's talk about Juwan Howard and how he has grown and still where he needs to grow as a head coach. I mean, we are dealing with a rookie head coach, and I got to wondering if I was overreacting to the game plan against Wisconsin, because in the grand scheme of things, other than, you want to win every game you play, it didn't really alter Michigan's seed in the NCAA tournament. Michigan probably was going to be a 6, 7, or 8 in the Big Ten tournament, whether it won that game or not. But when I went back and looked at it again, here's why I remain very concerned about it. Because we're into a time of year now where it's going to be one and done. Conference tournaments are beginning around the country tonight, in fact. And come Saturday, we're going to start punching tickets to the NCAA tournament. And I get, you know what, Eli Brooks is out with a broken nose, sinus infection. You don't have the mask ready. He's not ready to go. You've only got a 3-guard rotation to begin with. And so you're trying to figure out how you don't tax DeJulius and Simpson. I'll even grant trying at the beginning of the game that oddball big lineup to see if you can maybe catch Wisconsin napping and steal some minutes for DeJulius and see if you can stagger him and Simpson on the court a little bit without Eli Brooks. Fine. I don't think I wasn't optimistic it was going to work, but I could see at the beginning why you would try to do something like that. But then to come out in the second half with the exact same lineup, and then go on a run and then have Wisconsin realize, they're playing that same crap lineup, and just destroy your defense 5 minutes after you go on a 7-0 run and then never look back the rest of the way. You had the stat of what Michigan's plus minus was when they had they had a traditional lineup in there compared to that 4 big one guard lineup. That's the thing that'll cost you a season. Here in Indianapolis and beyond coming up. Why stick with something that is obviously not working? That's the part about it that, to me, you want to try something new at the beginning, fine. But then it was clear at the half the number one reason you were behind is you couldn't guard any of these guys in this lineup, and you come right back in the second half with that. What was the point of that?
I mean, we'll be honest, we don't really know because we were both critical of it after the fact. I mean, yeah, they lost the game because they played the four bigs together for about 23 minutes of game action against Wisconsin. And in that time, when they had the four bigs on the floor, they were -10, and they lost the game by 7. When they had David DeJulius and Xavier Simpson in the game together, they were plus overall. And they were plus by a lot overall. They're +7 until the last 21 seconds when Brandon Johns missed a couple of free throws. So, no, honestly, I think what often happens in talking to a lot of former players along the way and coaches, I think so many of these coaches get in their own way because they come up with a game plan that they're confident is going to win, and it doesn't work. And instead of saying, like, okay, let's just throw this out the window, a lot of them are like, well, it didn't work at first, but let's try it again because I'm confident it can. And so it's like they almost like are too stubborn. They're almost convinced by their own genius. Now, I don't know if that's what happened with Juwan Howard, but I do think that, he even admitted after the game a little bit of like, well, I had this strategy and yeah, I mean, maybe it didn't work as well as I thought it was going to work. I mean, so that's the hard part is we've gone from a John Beilein, who's considered one of the great, tournament coaches of all time because of his ability to adapt so quickly and present game plans that make it hard for opponents to keep up with, to a first-year coach that doesn't get a do-over. I mean, if he shows up if they advance out of the first weekend or the first game and they play in the second game and he puts some of the lineup combinations out there, some of the roster moves that we have seen happen throughout the season, which has been his biggest Achilles heel. He's done a lot of really good things this year and grown exponentially as a coach, but his lineup combinations continue to be confounding. And if he has one of those moments in the second game or even the first game, Michigan's season's over with. And then we're looking back and going, well, kind of a first-year coach probably cost them a chance to move a little bit forward. So that's something that's got to improve and evolve pretty significantly, pretty considerably here in just a short amount of time, or Michigan will have an early exit, and then he'll have to learn from it going into next season.
Brandon, eager to get your perspective on the conversation Michael and I were just having, because you're the one that goes and covers the team up close and personal for us at Wolverine Digest. You've had more exposure to Juwan Howard and the program than Michael and I have had to put together, and times 3 probably this season. So having dealt with him individually, what's your take on this conversation?
Yeah, I mean, he was asked directly, about the specific decision to start Brandon Johns when Eli Brooks was out, and I don't know. He's kind of a stick to his guns kind of guy. He doesn't really, he makes a decision that he thinks is the right one, and he sticks with it. I mean, that's what I've seen in this first season. I mean, he hasn't. At the same time, he has admitted, I'm still learning this, I'm still doing this, but he trusts in what he does. He believes in what he knows. I do think that he's working really hard. I don't think it's anything like that. I mean, he talks about how he loses sleep at night and how he's constantly watching film and constantly bouncing ideas off of assistant coaches. And, it's his first time ever doing it. I mean, this is what we talked about at the beginning when he was hired. Did Michigan reach a little bit? The program is where it is under John Beilein, and now you're going out and getting a rookie head coach. And, if he even makes the tournament with this roster, it's probably viewed as a success. So, I think he's been fine.
Agreed.
I agree with Mike. He's definitely rolled some lineups out there that you're just like, what? Why would he do that? Mike and I are extensive coaching experience that we both have. We talked about this on the radio. When your 2-guard goes down and you've got another 2-guard who plays a lot of minutes, just put him in. That just seems like a no-brainer. And instead he went with Brandon Johns, and they couldn't cover the 3 against Wisconsin. They got in a big hole early and never dug out. And then to your point, Steve, he stuck with it again in the second half when it seemed like the small ball lineup was a much better fit. So, yeah, I don't know. Juwan Howard knows more about basketball than we all do, and I'm not trying to challenge what he thinks he knows, but he's made some mistakes. He has made some mistakes with his lineups, and I think if he could go back and do it again, he might do it differently, but he hasn't really said that. And I think that's fine. I think it's fine for a coach to be confident in what he does, not second-guess himself, not give his players a reason to get to second-guess what he's telling them. So, I mean, I've been okay with it. I think he does a really good job in the press conference of answering questions. And he's been asked, some of those tough ones. People asked him straight away, like, why did you start Johns? Like, what was that all about? He gave his best answer. I don't think it worked out very well, but it is what it is. So he's made some mistakes. He might reflect on that in the future and say, like, yeah, I should have done that differently. But in dealing with him one-on-one and sitting in the same room with him, I've been pretty pleased with him top to bottom with how he's done things. But he's still learning. He's going to have to learn some things and get better, and we'll see, come tournament time, how those lineups look. I've been happy with the 8-man rotation, but he has done some wacky stuff for sure.
Well, I mean, overall, I think all three of us would agree he's done a phenomenal job given what he inherited, and the situation and the timing. And that doesn't even include he didn't have Franz Wagner until September. And then once he got him on campus, he broke his wrist, so he was out a lot of camp. Isaiah Livers has missed more than a third of the season with injuries. He had to put up with the suspension that he, of his team captain. And there are still, nuggets and pieces of information percolating and coming out about that. Eli Brooks and his broken nose. Just all the other various situations. What is an obscenely deep Big Ten conference? Maybe the toughest schedule any Power 5 team in the country this year when you look at who they played in the non-conference too, and that was the first schedule of games he had to play. I mean, he's done a phenomenal job overall, and if he continues to recruit like he is right now, we may never find out how great of a tactician he is, because we may never have to find out most of the time. He's going to have better athletes than the vast majority of teams that he's going up against. The one and to give him credit, like when he tried Colin Castleton against Rutgers, that worked. Okay, so I don't want to fault him trying stuff, but it's like we were doing that drop coverage on the screens early in the year too, and we couldn't guard anybody. The sticking with stuff so long when it's clear it doesn't work, I think that's kind of more of the issue, more than trying stuff that doesn't work, because we're always blasting coaches for stubbornly doing the same old thing, right? Not evolving. I don't have a problem with him trying new stuff, but when it's clear that it's not working, you know what I mean? Get off a sinking ship. That's the only point I was trying to make with that, Brandon.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I do think that's fair. I mean, there's been a little bit of, not a little bit. There's been a lot of feeling out what he's doing as a coach, and again, what works. And I mean, again, leaning on my middle school coaching days, I laugh at that a little bit because it's funny comparing the two. But like, you kind of get lost in the moment sometimes, and I think Juwan has even said that before. Maybe referencing his timeout usage, I think he talked about that. You kind of get caught up, and you almost forget, like, oh, I've got timeouts I can use, or oh, I can sub this guy in, or oh, I could. It's a really high pressure situation, and it's the first time he's ever done it. So I think he gets a little bit of a pass. I think he has done a phenomenal job top to bottom with the roster that he does have. And I mean, honestly, like, if you look at Michigan's roster, like, there's like one, maybe two guys that'll play in the NBA on that team, and that's Isaiah Livers and Franz Wagner. I think everybody else is, I mean, he doesn't have the most talent-laden roster in the league, but he's been able to do some pretty good things with it. And I think we talked about this before too. I don't know if you'd see much difference if this was John Beilein still coaching this team in his 44th year or whatever it would have been. So not too bad for Juwan in year one.
Let me add something to this equation too, because we've got such a microscope on Juwan Howard, and something you said earlier, Steve, about how there's probably 30 teams in college basketball and there's 30 towns across the country right now that are having similar conversations. Mm-hmm. Aren't there 50, 60, 70, 80 sports talk Michigan podcasts out there having similar conversations about their head coaches right now, saying, well, why did he do this? Why did he do that? Why isn't he, what is that lineup? Why don't you put these two guys together? That's every single conversation, every single team in the country is discussing those topics. And for here we are talking about how lineup combinations Juwan Howard struggles with. What was the number one pet peeve about John Beilein that he continued to stay stubborn with throughout his entire career was how he used guys when they got foul in foul trouble. If they got a second foul in the first half, they were out of there, whether that was with 10 minutes to go or 2 minutes to go or 18 minutes to go. And that was one of those brilliant minds in basketball history. And we were complaining about something that he did with his lineup. So I think we all have to keep that in mind, that as we've got Juwan Howard is scrutinized because he's the coach in our town for our team, but this is not a unique position. Everybody is having a similar conversation, unless maybe you're Kansas or Baylor or one of the top 3 teams in college basketball right now.
Yeah, I have to guard against that. I mean, I probably watch more regular season college basketball than the average guy, mainly from a sports handicapping perspective. But man, Michael, it seems like we miss more shots at the rim than any of the other 330 teams in college basketball. Maybe it's because this is the only one of them I'm rooting for every night, so I notice it more often. But it seems like we miss a lot of shots at the rim. Is it just me, or is that true?
You know what? I think it's a little bit of what you just said. I watched, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 games over the weekend, and I probably, if I'm being honest, probably saw 18 to 20 missed layups in those 7 games. I mean, that's a significant amount, and Michigan misses, maybe they miss more than that. I don't know. I think it's probably we're just a little too in tune with what our team does and does not do well.
Yeah, plus when your team misses the layup, it's personal than if you're just watching a game for fun or for other reasons. All right, let's get to some football. And ESPN's FPI is out for the first time in 2020. Now, this thing every now and then has a good track record. Several times, though, it does not. I mean, last year it had us 5th in the country, and the team most likely to make the playoff, other than Alabama and Clemson, because of the way that it rated Justin Fields as a transfer for Ohio State, and obviously that was way off. ESPN's FPI had LSU preseason number 1 the year that Les Miles got fired. Okay, but when you look at the teams that are in its preseason top 6, 3 of them are from the Big Ten. Ohio State and Penn State I don't think is probably much of a surprise. Wisconsin, with everything it loses, though, is at number 6. We play all 3 of those teams. Minnesota is right below us, I think, at 17th. Michigan is at 16th. So another loaded schedule for Michigan, according to ESPN's FPI analytics. But how much, if anything, do you put into any of that stuff this far? What are we, about 187 some odd days until Navy Notre Dame over there in Ireland or somewhere around there? How much stock do you put into that? Brandon, I'll start with you.
I mean, a little bit. I don't know the exact formula that ESPN uses to come up with that. I mean, I tend to just look at. I always think the most important thing is just what's coming back. I mean, if you've got essentially the same team that you did last year, then I would expect pretty similar results. And on the flip side, if you're replacing half of your starters on both sides of the ball, then I expect maybe a shakeup that could be a game or 2 in either direction. So, like, I'm sure that's part of it. I'm certain that's part of it. That they take into account who's returning. Do you have a big-time quarterback coming back? Are you dealing with a coaching change or positional coordinator changes or whatever? Scheme. I mean, all that stuff factors into that, I'm sure. But yeah, I mean, we talked about this list, I think, too, and I certainly think Wisconsin is a little too high. Penn State seems a little high. I mean, I don't know. It's one of those things where you start to kind of go player by player, like, oh, they lost that guy, they lost this guy, oh, they got a big time recruit coming in at that spot. Or you can kind of take a look at where Michigan has finished each of the last 5 seasons under Jim Harbaugh, and it's like it averages out to like 14 or 15th in the country. So, yeah, like that's pretty close. So, yeah, I mean, it's always fun to look at that, and yeah, I think I looked today, I was doing a story on Michigan versus Michigan State, like 221 days away from Michigan going to East Lansing to take on the Spartans. So, like, it's a ways off. A lot of stuff is going to happen. I'm sure you're going to see some more transfer stuff take place. Teams are going to find out what they have and what they don't have. A team like Michigan with the offensive line has got a lot to figure out. So it's fun. It's fun to look at and start talking about. But I think out of the ones you just named, I certainly think Wisconsin seems a little high. Losing a back like Jonathan Taylor that's program shaking. So I think we'll see what that looks like. But, I don't know how you can argue with Ohio State. I think Michigan's in a pretty reasonable spot at 16. I'm really curious to see about Minnesota this year. I put another story up earlier this week about Michigan's chances to win a top 10 game on the road. They might only get one shot. It might only be Ohio State at the end of the year if their seasons continue to go how they've went. But maybe there's that Minnesota game. Could they be a top 10 team midpoint of the season when Michigan gets ready to go to Minneapolis. So, yeah, it's interesting to look at that right now and at least generate some discussion. But it is kind of hard. I mean, maybe you know, Steve, better, or Mike, maybe you do, what their exact formula is to come up with these rankings. But it's not that far off, really, if you look at it.
Yeah, all these analytics are done with a different algorithm in mind. ESPN's FPI is a projection matrix. What it ultimately wants to do is it's a forecasting model. So those preseason rankings, based off of the information and data that they have now, that's where they think these teams are going to finish at the end of the upcoming season, is what they're saying. Is they think 3 Big Ten teams will finish in the final top 6, and Michigan's going to finish 16th, somewhere right around 9-3. That's what they're saying with the way that their analytics work, and they'll update them again probably post spring. But that's what their initial model says. Now, Bill Connolly, who also works at ESPN, has his own separate analytics. I think his are probably the best that are out there. He came over from SB Nation. His are kind of a forecast model as well, but they also are trying to measure how good they think teams are right now, because he uses them a lot from a point spread point of view. What are your thoughts, Michael?
Yeah, I put no stock in it whatsoever. I don't care. I'm tired of having conversations about what teams are like on paper. We all know that that's not worth much at all, especially when it relates to Michigan. You know, what they've projected to be. I'm looking at this Michigan team and I'm saying, okay, all I really want to know is, between these two quarterbacks, McCaffrey or Milton, does one of these two guys emerge as one of the top 10 quarterbacks in college football? If that happens, a lot is possible. Can Michigan buck its trend against teams on the road, top 25 teams on the road? Can they win those games? Because they haven't won one of them in the Jim Harbaugh era at Michigan State in 2018. If they don't do that, well, then they probably have at least 2 losses on their schedule: Minnesota and Ohio State, maybe Washington. I mean, so do they have a offensive coordinator that gets the very most out of their talent? Because they've got a lot of talent at the skill positions right now. Do they have an offensive line that doesn't take a huge step back with 4 new starters? So I don't know. I want to see things with my own eyes. One of the things that makes our job covering Michigan football very difficult is there's so few opportunities to see the team with your own eyes before the actual season begins. They'll have that open practice at the end of spring, and that's it. That's absolutely it. And so we won't see them until their first game against Washington, and that's the first time we'll have any opportunity to really judge what type of quarterback, what type of offensive line, what type of skill position players, if they have a defensive standout emerging. So there's almost a part of me that doesn't want to make a prediction about Michigan football or make a prediction about anybody this year, because there's just so many unknowns when you have such little access to see what they're actually about behind the scenes.
Final thing, I mentioned this at the top of the show. Let me get to you guys, or give you guys a chance to talk about it. I lost my damn mind watching the NFL Combine last weekend. And you guys know I'm a big NFL draft guy. It's one of my favorite seasons. It's the perfect merger of college and pro football, and it helps me get through the first half of the offseason before all the preseason magazines come out. But here's the other reason I love it, and Mike, you'll dig this because you're wired the same way. All the truth comes out in NFL draft season. Every coach trope, media trope, fan trope, all get exposed. What's real and what's agitprop all gets exposed during NFL draft season. Nothing is concealed. All fig leaves are removed. Okay, and I'm watching Khaleke Hudson, who is built like a will linebacker, running 4.57, which is a really good time actually for a safety running the 40 in the NFL. And yet I remember he couldn't cover Pat Freiermuth at tight end. I'm watching Josh Metellus run faster than any of the Ohio State receivers at the Combine this year. All right, running 4.56s, and dude didn't cover anybody in his entire career in man coverage. Shea Patterson next to Justin Love was the most athletic quarterback overall at the Combine. And I'm watching, I'm thinking back to all the times we just saw wide open spaces, man. Like it was Dixie Chicks to the end zone, wide open spaces. Just tuck the ball, hand it off. Dude, I'm losing my mind again just thinking about it. The idea that there's some kind of 40-point talent gap between Ohio State and Michigan. Donovan Peoples-Jones went out there. I think only Calvin Johnson's ever jumped higher as a wide receiver. Damn, I'm glad we didn't throw to that guy like hardly at all. I'm losing my mind again, Michael, just thinking about it. Go ahead and talk me off the ledge or talk me onto it. The choice is yours.
Yeah, I mean, I will say one thing. Straight line speed is not necessarily the type of athleticism that is required to win football games. That said, Josh Metellus running a 4.56 was a pretty big surprise. It shows that he's not a slow guy. Khaleke Hudson running a 4.57 was pretty incredive. Again, not a slow guy. But I mean, if you're picking guys off with crossing routes, or you've caught your safety looking in the backfield because of how well they're running football, which is something that Ohio State did extremely well against Michigan this past year, to the tune of about 275 yards, then your safety's, where's his eyes at? And his eyes, as fast as he is, if his eyes are in the backfield and his first two steps are forward, then it doesn't make a difference if he can run a 4.56, because that wide receiver is running at least probably a 4.6, and those two steps give him the edge. I'm going to share with you something that we were told this week by a former Michigan football player, and in his opinion, he told Brandon and I, said, look, he said, one of the things that he's really impressed with is Ohio State has done a phenomenal job these last few years, whether it's the guy up in the booth identifying this, or it's Ryan Day down on the sidelines, of kind of figuring out when some of their defensive backs especially start cheating, when they're taking that two steps forward instead of their first two steps back, when a linebacker is really locked in on the offensive backfield and is buying the play action. And in those moments, he said that is when Ohio State has struck Michigan and gone up top on the Wolverines. And so even though Josh Metellus has this great 4.56 speed, again, if his eyes are in the backfield, if he's taking his first step, two steps forward, and give Ohio State a lot of credit, because that is when they've gone over the top to Chris Olave or to one of their other wide receivers that are really talented. And so, maybe that's just what this all comes down to is they've done a better job as coaches recognizing that. And then the other part is, once they've put that into the game plan, once they've called the play, they've done a far better job executing those big play opportunities than Michigan has against Ohio State the last few years.
Brandon, I'll give you the last word on this. I'll even take away the Ohio State factor. The kind of talent that is out there, we should not be losing 3 to 4 games a season. I mean, I'll even hand you the Ohio State. You can have it. All right, we can't beat them. They're better. They're great. They cheat. They're a superior breed. Whatever excuse, rationalization we now want to use, fine. Explain to me the other 2 to 3 losses we're getting a season with these kinds of athletes. Hell, Alabama said Josh Uche was the best defensive player they played all year.
I got nothing for you, Steve. I don't know. I mean, like, I'll piggyback on what Mike said. I mean, it's the underwear Olympics for a reason. You can train yourself to run a fast 40 in spandex shorts and track spikes. I mean, how often do you literally even run in a straight line for 40 yards in a football game? Like, it doesn't happen. I mean, sure, you need. To
be fair, we saw Josh Metellus running in straight lines 40 yards quite often, if you know what I'm saying, brother.
Yeah, behind someone with the ball that caught it over the top.
Yeah.
No, I mean, like, you need speed. You need fast guys. Like, the faster teams are, especially in college. It's minimized a little bit in the pros because there's so many other things involved in the preparation and the experience. And, I mean, there's a lot of other things involved. In college, I mean, generally the faster guys are kind of the star players. So I think it's a little more important there. But there's just so many other things that go into it. I mean, Mike touched on some of them just now. I think, quickness and suddenness and twitchiness, like, Donovan Peoples-Jones ran a 4.48, had the monstrous 44-inch vertical. He's first team off the bus on any team he's on. But if he's not quick in and out of his breaks and can't create separation, has problems with drops, and isn't going as hard as Ronnie Bell, then he's not going to be as effective. I don't care what his 40 time is or what his vertical looks like or what his broad jump looks like. So, I mean, you can even see it when he's running. He's got this really long stride. I mean, we saw it when he returned punts. I know he returned 2 for a touchdown over the course of his career, but other than that, he was pretty average back there. Now, a big part of that is fielding the ball, which he was really good at for the most part. So there's a lot that goes into it at every position. Shea Patterson popped off the 4.67. That's a pretty good time. And I will say, if you can run a 4.67 and you've got 12 yards of open grass in front of you on those read option plays, sometimes that's going to translate.
Yeah.
But there's a lot else that goes into it. He was dealing with injuries, or maybe he's not very good at reading, or maybe they're saying give every time. I mean, there's just so much that goes into a football game and into a play-by-play basis that's not really measurable in the combine. I'm with you, Steve. I know it looks like Michigan. Mike just sent me a tweet today that had Michigan, I think it was number 2 or number 3 in the medal race, if you want to call it that, at the combine. Guys in their position group who performed better than anybody else at these specific drills. Michigan had 3 gold medals, if you want to call them that, and 3 silver medals and a couple of bronzes. I think the only other team that had more than them was Clemson, I believe. I'd have to look back at it. And then Missouri was number 3, so I don't know how much stock you really want to put in that. But I get your point. There were talented guys on Michigan's roster who went up against some of the other countries, some of the other programs' biggest and best players, and they acquitted themselves very well. So you kind of wonder, why isn't it translating over? Where's the disconnect? What does this really mean? I don't think I have a great answer for you. I don't think that I do, because you'd like to see some of those, those explosive numbers or those elite numbers show up in a football-specific way on the field. And certainly against Ohio State, we haven't seen it. And you're right. I mean, 2 or 3 other losses every year that Jim Harbaugh's been there, we haven't seen it either. So that's $1 million question. Why is Jim Harbaugh winning 8 or 9 games that, maybe we could win 8 or 9 games. I don't know. Maybe we're giving us too much credit there, but it's the 2 or 3 game season every year that really makes or breaks the season that he's come up short in. And I don't know. Do any of us have an answer for that one? Does anybody who watches Michigan football?
I wish I did.
One? I don't think so.
Here's what I do know. In 2016, Michigan had the most players drafted. We lost 3 games on that team. And this year we had the second most players invited to the NFL Combine, and we lost 4 games. I know that. And
yep.
I mean, you know what? Let me ask a very uncomfortable question to close this out. Okay. How many coaches in the Big Ten do you think would have lost 3 games in 2016 and 4 games in 2019 with those rosters? I don't know. I'm asking. You think James Franklin would have? Maybe he would have. I don't know. This is not a gotcha. I'm surveying it because I'm trying to rationalize this in my own mind. Okay, trying to make sense of it. I think nobody thinks Ryan Day or Urban Meyer would have. Okay, Mark D'Antonio 5 years ago would not have. Mark D'Antonio the last couple of years might have. I don't think Pat Fitzgerald would have with that kind of ability. I don't think Jeff Brom would have. I don't think probably even Kirk Ferentz would have. I mean, dude, he loses 3 to 4 games a year with a lot less recruiting recruiting base than Michigan has. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Brandon? Then I promise I will let you guys go. What are your thoughts on it?
I mean, that's a tough what if game to play, but I mean there is something to look at there. I mean, you see guys with less talent having similar success. You mentioned Kirk Ferentz. Yeah, I don't know. That's a hard thing to say. I mean, you're talking about fit. You're talking about guys, in Kirk Ferentz's case, who's been there for so long, and he's kind of got a system figured out. You're talking about Jeff Brom, who's got far less talent, but has this different type of offense. I mean, Ryan Day and Urban Meyer look like 2 of the best coaches we're going to see for a long time. That's a hard game to play. And yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us would have thought that Jim Harbaugh would be one of those ones that's like, no, he's not losing 3 or 4 games with that kind of talent. There's no way.
And the schematic advantages of the NFL. Michael, you get the last word on this. I'm just in my head. I'm thinking back over the last 5 seasons. Is the Notre Dame game this year the only time we can think of that Michigan won a game in the Harbaugh era where it wasn't obvious they had the most talent on the field? Is that the only one?
I will say this. Again, I think this is the microscope thing. James Franklin has a awful record on the road.
Yeah, it's terrible. You're right.
Top 25 team.
Yeah, but his name's not Jim Harbaugh, so no one knows about it. Right.
Yeah, and I mean, I guarantee if we went back and looked at Kirk Ferentz and Paul Chryst, on the road against top 25 teams, I bet you their record is not that much better than what Jim Harbaugh has done. I think we're talking about a different stratosphere when we're talking about when we're discussing what Urban Meyer or what he appears to be Ryan Day would do with this roster. I think that's a different conversation. But I think we're stretching a little bit to say, like, hey, Kirk Ferentz, Pat Fitzgerald, Paul Chryst, Mark D'Antonio wouldn't have lost these games. I think they would have, and they are losing those games right now. It's just that for some of them, Ferentz and Paul Chryst, they're not playing a lot of ranked teams on the road. For Penn State, they're playing either Michigan or Ohio State every other year on the road. But yeah, James Franklin's record against top 25 teams away from State College is pitiful. Absolutely pitiful. And it just doesn't get as much conversation because he's not Jim Harbaugh. Maybe it doesn't. I'm sure it does in Pennsylvania, but it doesn't elsewhere. So I think we're being a little, I don't want to say too hard. I think we're giving these other coaches way too much credit when their records are pretty close to Harbaugh's on the road against the better teams that they play.
Gentlemen, thank you for joining us. I kept my word. You get the last word, Mike. Thank you guys both for joining us here this week on Michigan Podcast. Always good to have you with us.
Thank you.
All right, take care. We'll come back, wrap things up here on Michigan Podcast in a moment. Don't forget, you can stay up to date with everything we talk about here on Michigan Podcast in between episodes by visiting our website at wolverinedigest.com. Again, that's wolverinedigest.com. Myself, Michael Spath, and Brandon Brown keep you up to date each and every day on everything trending and happening with the Maize and Blue. So again, if you want to stay up to date on those Michigan Wolverines, go to wolverinedigest.com. Again, that's wolverinedigest.com. This week's Twitter poll, we asked you, would you rather Michigan get the highest seed at Ken in the NCAA tournament, even if that meant having to play a 4-versus-5 game in the second round or a number 1 seed in the Sweet 16? Or would you rather have a more favorable draw? 80% of you remember John Beeline's axiom. It's about the draw, not the seed. You're right. You'd always rather have the favorable draw. 80-20 was the answer there. Yes, you want the more favorable draw. This week's question of the week comes from MT. It's gotten to the point that some of my Ohio State friends are actually showing pity on me for how the football rivalry has gone. Isn't that even worse? Yes. Yeah, it's like I've never understood the whole complaint about you ran up the score. I'd be more embarrassed if you took a knee, like showing me mercy at that level. That's condescending. I'm more embarrassed by you taking a knee than no longer trying. Or than to keep trying, I should say. Because at least then I can maybe get a few licks in on you on the way out of my whooping. If you take a knee, I just have to live with the indignity of everyone in the stadium knows I got punked. So along those lines, as well as a fan, that's the fan version of your rival fans taking a knee when they start feeling bad for you and pitying you. That is absolutely worse, MT. You bet. Absolutely worse. And another reason why, until further notice, until Michigan decides it wants to participate in this rivalry, I just have to eject. I can't. I can't even. That's going to do it for this week's episode of Michigan Podcast. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Michigan Podcast, online at wolverinedigest.com. And please remember to like, rate, subscribe, share, 5-star review, whichever is applicable, given the platform that you're accessing us, whether it's Stitcher, YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, etc. Thank you to all of you that have given us those great reviews. We appreciate you. Until next week, go Blue.